Artwork, critiques, Photoshop files, and reference sheets are all available on my Patreon. Well, hello there guys and girls, my name's Mikey, welcome back to my room. It's time for another tutorial. And today, my friends, we're going to be taking a look at the material and folds that you get with your clothing in the designs for your anime and manga characters. Although to be fair, like with most of these tutorials, the mechanics or the cheat method that we're going to discuss today when it comes to the folds and wrinkles in clothing can really apply to pretty much most types of character or people or clothing design. So guys, in the background right now, you can see that I'm doing a cheeky bit of time lapse just to build up a voluptuous figure to hang some clothes on. So if any of that looks a bit new to you, I do have separate tutorials, probably linked on screen right now, where I talk about building up your anime and manga characters from some basic shapes. So guys, hello, as ever, if you are new around here, do click that subscribe button because it really helps me out. And with the work that we're going to get done today, if you actually want a copy of this reference sheet, it's all available in my tutorial works pack on Patreon for $1, linked below, of course. However, as ever guys, I do recommend all you need is something as simple to get drawing is a super cheap disposable mechanical pencil. This is about as hard or as soft as a 2B pencil, I'd say. And I'm just using some super cheap disposable printer paper, but I do have a number of sheets of this paper down just so that I don't have too much of a hard surface from the desk. Working on something a little bit softer is going to help with your line quality. So we've got our character here, but first I just want to talk about a few things on another sheet of paper. Now this one, before I forget, is just to rest my hand on so that natural greases and oils don't just mess up the paper that I'm actually working on. Never hurts to have a scrap. However, let's just really quickly talk about the way I tend to cheat my way through folds and materials. The thing is, the whole world of drapery, clothing, and all the different weights of things, a thick leather jacket versus a very thin t-shirt and so on, they all act and respond a little bit differently under pressure and different motion. There's inert folds, pipe folds, drop folds, tension points, spiral folds, all that sort of stuff. And the truth is, I think if we start just going into all of it, it's a little bit too much, a little bit overwhelming. So I thought it might be more fun if we just discuss the very simple way that I tend to do things. That will get you guys going and doing folds and clothing, giving it that kind of realistic, convincing look. And then further down the line, once we're a bit used to it, we can start to get a bit more particular and specific. So my kind of cheating method is really simple. It's just this. Think about things in terms of triangles. So the main thing you're going to see with all sorts of creases and folds are obtuse triangles. I think I've done this right. These are the flat ones. That's a very bad example, but here's some obtusey boys. And acute triangles, those really thin pointy ones as well. And you might also just start to curve them. And you'll notice now that when they start curving in, and if I start drawing only part of those triangles, we start to get the feeling of wrinkles and folds going on. So just think obtuse or just think acute. Also, you're cute, so well done. So that is basically what I'm just about to start doing on this model here, but I will explain my way all the way around. And we're basically just hopefully going to end up with some clothing, and I'll give you a couple other examples in time-lapse too. So let's get this paper down here, make sure that I'm happy with the edge of my pencil. And what I tend to do is often start with anchor points when it comes to the actual shirts and shapes. So there'll be an edge somewhere to this shirt. I like to start with the collar because I tend to work with my characters from the head down. And we're going to be giving this lady a nice deep diamond V. So let's have a line where the clothing is meeting up behind the neck, sweeping down towards the chest, and then Ving in towards the middle. And I will talk about a very particular thing when it comes to the amount of tightness and definition that you have with a lot of type of work shirts and how it kind of curves around the chests of ladies, because sometimes you're kind of describing a shirt with a very odd cut that doesn't necessarily describe real life, because material, when it's pushed out, will tend to hang down instead of tightly scooping in. Although there are variations to elasticity in material, we're going to cover that, don't worry. So say I've got a nice deep V going on in the front. The next thing I'm going to start to think is, okay, well, how's it hanging? I might be happy with the idea that the material is going to hang down from the shoulders, so I can go quite near to the shoulder line of this character and follow that along quite happily, like so. But then I'm going to start to think, right, if the arms are up, things are going to pull up and away from the armpit area. So this is where I'm starting to get in maybe 1 or 2 cheeky triangular shapes just in here, just branching up a little bit and out where there's some folds or pulls in the material. And then I might just go over to the edge, and instead of doing a flat line to show the edge of a shirt and where it comes off the arm, I'm just going to give it a tiny bit of depth by describing it not just in an ellipse, but almost like a very, very shallow diamond shape to get the idea that maybe this arm's heading a little bit more towards us as well. And then I'm just going to start to bring some lines in. So I'm using quick gestures to pull these lines back. I'm trying to work quite firmly and deeply with my pencil here, just so that it's very clear for you guys on the camera at home. But I also might just work very lightly and loosely until I find the different curves and shapes that I like. Again, just always pulling this idea of folds. Let's put a tiny bit of seam edge up here and along here, just to show that this is a clearly intentional defined edge or cut to the material. And then I'll do the same along here. It helps reinforce those edges and define those shapes. And then when it comes up here, we're going to do a very similar thing. But I'm going to start to curve things just to give you guys the impression that this arm is coming a little bit towards us. So again, when you're raising your arm, your kind of shoulders are pulling everything up, but it's going to be dragging up from the underside. So let's sweep up here, maybe with a line just under the armpit. And then I'm going to just start to curve some lines out and up towards the arm as it kind of rotates and starts to pull that material. And I'm going to get away with these tiny bumps on the profile or silhouette of your character are going to build up that feeling of fold and materials. And then I'm just going to again do a very loose but slightly deeper kind of semi-diamond, semi-oval shape just to bring a bit of form in there. And then maybe there's going to be a pull line that kind of rides up towards here, towards where we've got a slight point there. And maybe the material as well is just going to sweep back in just under there. And then once again, I'm just going to put a bit of an edge on that cut. Let's bring that down just a touch further, just like so, and sweep it back up in there. And then we've got this area around the boobs as well. Now, when you've got quite a chesty character like I tend to draw them, the parts that are going to be pushing out against the material are going to flatten out the material against the surface. So where these boobs press out, we're not going to have many wrinkles and folds around here. We're generally going to be covering this curve quite naturally as it folds around. We'll probably be doing the same thing round on this side as well. And you must excuse me, this isn't meant to be a final high quality drawing. This is just so that we can talk about the fold. So if I end up drawing something derpy, don't hate me for it. And then maybe just as we get in towards the top edge, it gets a bit more lax. So I might get just the odd crease or fold line there. And I'm starting to curve things around to follow the curve of the boob. Now, before I actually start working the area under, I want to think about the other place where things might be anchored in, the areas where the tension and the pull is going to happen. That tends to be if you're tucked in around about a belt. So let's give this a relatively high effeminate waistline, something around about here. I'm just going to curve this belt line down a touch to give the idea that this character has like some nice high-waisted jeans that really show off that hip. I'm doing the old Disney Pixar thing and I'm going a bit dumpster truck as I make my way down. Just a habit that I've learned to appreciate. And then now we can start to take a look at a few other things. The pull of the material isn't going to tuck perfectly underneath the boob. Most shirts don't work like that. It's going to sweep down until it's tucked in around the belt. So I'm going to start by doing a few cheeky zigzag lumps, maybe here, maybe there, to show where the material is just going over the edge of the belt. And then I've got a few key lines which are going to be the most important. I'm going to show a tug of material sweeping down from an outside edge around about there. And then I might just come in and start that vague triangular shape again, where I'm just doing a few acute triangles in here. And then I'm going to bump out around about here above the belt line to show an element of natural kind of folding and wrinkling going on, where the material is just starting to relax. And then I might just follow these sweeps, keeping that triangle point towards a particular location. Just come around here with one or two other sweeping lines, just like so. And then, when it comes to cutting across the boobs, I find what usually helps, instead of a single line right down the bottom, you can kind of get a bit of a crease or a fold underneath one that sweeps across the other. So I'm going to go from down here, and I'm actually going to just make a line that comes up along like that, and maybe just turn that into a triangle pointing in the other direction, a little bit down this way as well, just to kind of show that feeling. And then I can still start to make lines under here, but this way it's not too much of a kind of cliff or shelf that goes directly underneath things. And then maybe we can just start to put a few more shapes down here. So let's put a relatively obtuse triangle pointing downwards down here, and then we're just going to start to sweep up the other way with a few more triangular shapes, always curving around the body. And then again, for the silhouette or the profile, I'm just going to make sure that we've got a bit of a crease or a tuck line in there, and maybe just the odd bit of shape up here like so, just describing things up top there as well. So let's just go ahead and get a very simple belt shape on here, and I'll just talk about where you get a lot of creases and folds around the crotch as well. So whilst I'm just filling this bit in, I just want to mention one point that I can't stress enough. As you get your head around folds and feelings and materials, you'll start to realize that it can actually look really, really good with your artwork. And I do recommend you get your head around it. But the best way to do that is look at real life examples. Look at people who are wearing uniforms, work suits, office clothing, and just start to see and notice patterns where folds tend to take place, where the anchor points are, where the pressure points are. But again, we'll come back to that as we dive into some future material tutorials, so we won't worry too much right now. However, let's say that this character is wearing those jeans. Let's get a center crease line that goes all the way down the middle, somewhere like so. Then there's usually the flap fold part that hides over the zip cover. Now, I'm not a fashion designer, so we're kind of just doing this by a bit of memory. And then maybe somewhere down here, you end up with a shape for some pockets. Now, the good thing about materials as well is wherever there's a line or a natural seam on some materials, it can be very nice to draw that in as well, because it's going to accentuate the overall curves of your character. Now, where I've got things tucked up by the belt, I'm going to, on that profile, just put another couple cheeky shapes in there, just a few triangular bumps, just to give it the feel of all of this material. And then really, just like we have a few key points here where things are pulling off a boob and sweeping out in triangles, or pulling up from the underside of the arm and sweeping out from triangular points again, this time it's all about the crotch. So we're going to get some curving triangles to show that we've got shape coming over the meat of the thigh. So let's sweep out like so. But again, you can kind of imagine we're just bringing it back in, curving our way in and out, one after the other, something like that. Maybe some of that's going to pull from the top. And where we've got these edge shapes here, I'm just going to put a few cheeky acute triangular shapes in like so. And then with this leg, if you imagine this one's coming a bit towards us, like so, then this one's going to be going a little bit further back, like so, just some curves to show the shape of the surface there. A very similar thing, but I'm just going to now sweep those angles of the triangles into a curve going the other way. So a little bit down here, let's sweep up there like so. Maybe we're just going to come out here, and then we can just start to do things like follow the natural edge of the shape of the leg down. Not too many folds and wrinkles coming down the sides. We're just going to sweep over the main areas. And the next area of kind of wrinkles or bits of material would probably start occurring around about the knees and so on. Now, remember, we're going to be covering in detail all sorts of different clothing types, so don't worry too much right now. This is just the overview where I really want you to start, ideally, kind of just thinking about the different folds that are out there and what you're going to be seeing. But I have already done one when it comes to, or a tutorial I should say, when it comes to wet clothing. Wet t-shirts and the way that they hug the body is a little bit different. So we've got a tutorial maybe available showing up here where we've already taken a look. And I've already been taking a look at that schoolgirl style as well, where we've covered skirts and a very simple way that you can break those down and start to take a look at, you know, how they work as well. The mechanics and dynamics of materials, really nice to get into, but we'll just kind of do it item of clothing by item of clothing as we make our way through. So this is a very kind of simple idea of how you can be expressing that. Again, mostly triangles, even if some of those triangles are curves, which I'm trying to use to describe the surface. I'm just using a lot of very simple lines at the moment. And what can really build things up is a simple bit of shading as well. So we might take a look at that further down the line. But again, I don't want to overcomplicate it for now. So guys, what I'm going to do is drop into a little bit of time lapse. I'm going to give you an example of two more ladies. I'm going to do, let's think, an office lady shirt from an ever so slightly lower angle, just so that we can take a look at how the material goes up towards the underboob without necessarily becoming uber tight. And then we're going to take a look at a bit more of a traditional schoolgirl thing where maybe you do actually describe it as being very tight around the chest. But in order to make that work with a dry school shirt kind of feeling, you're going to need to make things pull very tightly around the buttons in order to make the cut and the seam of the material seem believable. So okay guys, let's dive straight in and I'll see you at the end. Okay guys, and yeah, welcome back. So we've just put together a couple of other examples. We've got an office lady look and a standard schoolgirl uniform vibe as well. And I've generally started around the collars and anchor points for each of these pieces, worked my way down, but also just followed curves which are under pressure, where the material's getting stretched, holding tight against those areas, and then working out where I can fit more of these general triangular shapes, just keeping all these angles and these jagged movements to really just give the feeling that there's loads of creases and folds kind of going in a believable manner. So what I just wanted to show, especially with this one and a slightly lower angle as we look a bit up, is that when you've got a very chesty character, unless the material is very flexible and tight fitting, as the boobs project out at their furthermost point, you're not going to immediately tuck back in and under. It's probably just going to come down and pull and tuck where things might actually just meet into the waistline. And then we'll talk about shirts which might just be showing a bit more underboob in the future, where that hangs a little bit differently. Now again, you can see that I'm just doing these curving, sweeping triangular shapes, coming from areas of fold up to areas where there's pressure. So again, the boob's pushing out the material here, but it means it's going to be pulling up for more of the material here. So these lines are all just kind of flowing up to help describe that shape. Again, as mentioned, never hurts to show the odd seam of material going up or down to help overly describe the shape of the body that's underneath. And as we go down this arm, you can see that I'm just bumping out these triangular shapes as we make our way down around the elbow area and just throwing in these slightly curved triangular points, almost in an abstract fashion, but still kind of trying to delineate a show of the arm rotating and curving on the materials. Again, not getting too stuck down in the perfect details, but trying to make it readable and believable. As mentioned over here, we've got a few kind of flatter triangle shapes. We've got all of our obtuse angles going down here. Our acute angles describe a bit more of these longer areas and movement and motion. And even over here, you'll see that I'm curving over the hip a bit with these kind of vague shapes and these kind of triangular lines, again, to help describe that form. And then what I wanted to take a look at over here with the slightly more schoolgirlish one, and let's just vibe up here whilst we say hello to our lovely patrons, is that if you're going to be describing a school shirt as very tight around the chest, and then you're going to try to bring that in as much as you can underneath, the reality is you're going to get a lot of pull and a lot of pressure across the buttons. Now, admittedly, I think this example here could probably do with being a little bit cleaner and a little bit more defined, but hopefully it gets a bit of the idea across that you're going to be showing some of these areas under tension as well, and then a little bit more of a school skirt. So do remember, guys, especially with examples like this, I have a wet t-shirt tutorials, we've got schoolgirl skirts tutorials, basic shapes, all of that, and I'm going to be adding this particular sheet in to my work pack as well. So if you want access to the entire set, you can just grab it for $1 on Patreon. And on screen right now, you're probably seeing the names of some lovely, delicious people. These are the April patrons. So of course, an extra big shout out also to the highest tier patrons, Merissa, Brendan J, Hamongchi L, Mighty Mega X, Danny S, and Ahmad T. Thank you very much, guys, because of course, as you know, I just like to make free drawing tutorials here on YouTube. I don't have any paywalls, there's no courses that you have to buy, simply because drawing is very close to my heart, as well as being able to produce awesome things. I think it helps take your mind off of life's troubles sometimes and can be really therapeutic, and I don't want there to be any barriers between you and giving drawing a go. But of course, that's a terrible business model. The only reason I'm able to do this is thanks to everybody's support on Patreon. So much love there. I'll get this pack added in, as well as all of the other rewards and things coming out as well. So guys, I really hope you found this to be a useful introduction into the world of how can I draw wrinkles and folds on clothing. Again, we'll be doing a lot more in the future. And if you've got any thoughts or feedback, get your sweet selves into the comment section below and let me know. Make sure you're subscribed, of course, for more stuff in the future. And again, just thank you very much for bearing with as we warm back up into the world of making drawing tutorials and getting all of these other things done. I hope you guys have a bloody lovely week, and I'll see you next time. Take care.